have any questions?
When you talk about the land around Hawthorne, that requires no change in the county, the county.
No, it would.
It would.
Well, two ways this can happen. That little area around Hawthorne. When you go back to the map, it's the eastern third of number 3. That kind of crescent around Hawthorne. Two ways this can happen. It can either the county commission can change the zoning of the land use on it to give them that kind of mixed use thing that they want to do there, and they can develop it under county standards. Although we don't think the environmental protection should be changed, we just change the land use. It's appropriate because I mean it's right next to an urbanizing area. It can happen that way, or the city of Hawthorne can annex it. The difference is Hawthorne, unlike the county, Hawthorne doesn't have any way to require the developer to pay the upfront costs of things like roads and infrastructure. They don't have impact fees, transportation, multimodal transportation fee that the county now collects. So if you develop under county standards, the developer's got to pay for the road infrastructure upfront. Hawthorne doesn't have any money to build roads. So it's kind of to their advantage to have this developed under the county process, and then they can annex it. That's the both worlds. And personally, I want to project that. You know, urbanized areas, if the people there want to be in the city, they should be in the city. You have to be voted on by the people there. So those are the kind of two options. If they do it under the county, it would require changes. That's an area where I'm willing to negotiate with Plum Creek personally.
But could they annex it even though there are some areas there that are not part of Plum Creek?
No.
That are not part of Hawthorne? Would they have to annex those?
State law and local law have constraints on annexation. You can't leap out into the countryside and annex something that's not physically adjacent to the city. That's illegal under either state or county standards. You can only annex lands that are immediately adjacent to you and that you can demonstrate you can provide public services to. So the only part of this that they could realistically annex that's in their proposed development plan anyway is that sliver right there. Again, the part below Hawthorne Road, very, very wet, just different from the part to the north of it. This area, as you can see, is virtually a lake. I don't know what they can do there anyway, but this has this big chunk of developable land right in the middle of it.
Okay. They could annex that because the one portion of it is contiguous.
Yeah, it is.
Even though there is the little yellow area that it wraps around, it's not part of Hawthorne.
Correct.
And they could leave that as an enclave.
Correct. That's what they can do, and yeah, well, that's basically it.
And when the plan is amended, they don't immediately get the zoning for it on a parcel by parcel basis. They have to come back then in a second wave and ask for rezoning.
That's right.
On a parcel by parcel basis.
Yeah, I should say something about that. Thanks for bringing that up. There are two steps to this process. The first is called legislative. It's kind of broad, theoretical. It gives them those big numbers, 10,500 homes, 15 million square feet of commercial, but it doesn't speak to where it happens or the details. The street's going to go here. The houses are going to be there. This is the wetland that's going to be destroyed. This is how we're going to provide water and sewer. All those important details, they will come, if it's approved, at a second stage, which is very different from this stage. There are a lot of legal constraints on what you can say, what the county commission can or can't do. So basically, we have to say, without having all the details presented to us, we have to say yes or no. And then we get all the critical details later at the second stage of the process, the zoning stage, after it's too late for us to go back. Once we grant the rights, we can't take them back. So it very much involves trust. You got to trust that this is going to happen or else you don't do it. So yeah, there is a second stage to it and the rules change now. I can't be out here talking to you all at the second stage like this unless I do a lot of things like declare everything that I said and blah, blah, blah. At this stage of the game, anyone can talk about this in any way that they want to and shoot. Yes, sir.
Does anybody look at the watershed and what's going to happen to the lakes when they develop this?
I could spend a whole night just talking about the water, so I don't ever really get started on it. Yes, water management districts are the ones that are supposed to do this analysis. They will ultimately be in charge of it. By the way, all the data on these maps, This comes from the water management districts. The same data that Plum Creek will be required to use. It's the latest available and best data. All required to do by law. So I didn't just make these up. They're generated by county staff. Water management districts are supposed to be responsible for water quantity primarily. The state DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is supposed to be overseeing water quality. Now, if you believe those two public agencies are doing a good job with those things, then you can trust that it's free. Many people who follow these things think we're doing an absolutely horrible job, or we're going into the future with our eyes closed. You know, we just can't stop the grading train. So that process will be overseen by the water management districts. The county will not be involved. And theoretically, they're supposed to avoid water quality impacts. All the stormwater is supposed to be contained on site, et cetera, et cetera. We have a poor history of actually doing that in the state. Does that answer your question? The water management districts will be overseeing all this. Is there enough water? Well, that's the same problem we have everywhere. If the development happens on the west side of the county, we still have to come up with the water. So I don't necessarily fault Plum Creek for that. The problem there is just growth that we haven't provided for. And it's going to be there no matter how or where the growth happens. So water quantity issues, the amount of water, I haven't really gotten into too much because of that. I do think that this is, for water quality purposes, a very bad place to build wetlands. It's going to destroy a lot of wetland jobs. It's going to cause a lot of contamination, a lot of impacts on the site, which can't be avoided, and then off the site, through things that run off. Plum Creek insists they're going to contain it all. I think that's impossible. Any questions? Get a few other questions, and I'll come back to you. You've already asked one. Yes, ma'am.
One of the arguments that I've seen from environmentalists who support the plan is that our county restrictions compared to the state restrictions can be legally challenged, and then Plum Creek could do whatever they wanted without making the county's plans. Is that a true statement, or is there any truth in that at all?
Theoretically, the state can pass changes that take away the rights of local governments to do things.
But as it stands now,
As it stands now, no. It's in state law, we're allowed to do the things that we're now doing. One of the few things that local governments are definitely still completely responsible for is land use and zoning. It's hard for me to imagine the state getting into that. That would really create a revolution. Now, they could do things like change our wetland protection. They could preempt our wetland protection through some special statute aimed just at Alachua County. Politically, I think that would be difficult for them to do right now, but even if they could accomplish that, for all the reasons I laid out during this discussion, there are a lot of constraints that what Plum Creek could do. Essentially, we think that with or without a comp plan, what Plum Creek can do with the market conditions of what they're doing is more benign than what they're proposing to do. Because there are still state protections of wetlands. You can't just go in and just destroy everything you want to. They do have a set of standards. They're just weaker than the county standards.
Can you give some insight into why Hawthorne downtown is such a ghost town? There's so many little shops that are empty that have really nice character that people would go to if there was something there. It's kind of like a little High Springs type of environment, and the lakes are right there. Why isn't there anything? Aren't there any businesses in there? You know?
I mean, I'd just be speculating. I mean, it's happening all over the state, all over the place. I live south of Okeechobee, which at least has a little antique trade they can do.
Yeah.
But Archer, across Waldo, a lot of other communities are experiencing the same kind of things because there's not enough population. They haven't grown. The population hasn't grown too much. And that's why I said, you know, if you think that this part of next to Hawthorne could help, if any of it has the potential to help Hawthorne, it's that part beside there. And I can see no reason why we would take this action now on all of Plum Creek's land for a 50-year plan, which is ridiculous. You know, we don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now, but they're billing this as a 50-year plan. Why would you give away all those rights now?
Would that really
Why would
help
you do that?
Hawthorne in the near future?
Certainly not in the near future.
Yeah.
But I can see no reason why we can't do a little piece near Hawthorne. See what happens. See if Plum Creek can deliver on their promises. That part of it I don't think can really hurt Alachua County's environment too much, and it might help Hawthorne. And in 10, 15 years from now, come back, we'll talk about the next piece. Yes?
I have several questions, but I'll start with one.
Okay.
And kind of what she's talking about. Under your plan,
The comp plan?
yes, sir? What is y'all's plan for the east side, Hawthorne, all out this way?
The eastern Gainesville, the bulk of it is actually in the city of Gainesville. All of the cities and counties have their own comprehensive plan. It's not my plan, by the way. It's the public plan, just, okay. And most of that is in the city of Gainesville. So that question would probably be better directed to them, but I know that in the 15 years I've been involved in local politics here, we've been doing everything possible. There is a special plan just recently called Plan East Gainesville, you may have heard of. It was a collaborative effort between the city and the county that basically says, man, we will find a way to make anything happen here if there's a market for it. We put a lot of investment into public resources, upgrading the cities and parks and doing things, but there are a couple of natural constraints on what can happen there. As you move out of the city into the unincorporated county, it gets wetter and wetter and wetter. And even existing East Gainesville is building some very wet areas. And when it rains big there, go through East Gainesville and look at what's happening. There's flooding. They have flooding problems now with the development that they've done in the past. And the further you go east, the worse that problem's going to get. Eventually you get to the lake. And it's not like there's nothing between East Gainesville and the lake. A lot of people live there. There are houses there, so it's kind of a rural density, but a lot of it's taken up by low density, kind of old style subdivisions, and that provides a constraint as well. So there are reasons why there's not any population there, but mainly because of these natural constraints. Historically, all the development's gone west. And that makes sense, because that's where the dry land is, that's where the interstate is, that's where the population is. So it's not a great conspiracy to keep East Gainesville down. It's just they're facing some real constraints. Again, I think the best solution for them, along with Plan East Gainesville, keep making key public infrastructure investments in the area, but ultimately you need more population. And they're limited in that, except to the extent that the density and things that are happening in downtown Gainesville can keep spreading outwards. You know, those effects are spreading into the Waldo Road corridor now. They have over the last 5 or 10 years. So some good things are being done. It's not going to happen tonight. The main thing is to avoid a new wave of sprawl that's going to drain resources and attention away from the already developed areas. Yes, ma'am.
I too am completely heartbroken when I see downtown Hawthorne, the potential buildings that Karen spoke about. You know, if I had any money at all, I'd be investing there, trying to start some sort of business there. Why that's not done? My concern would be that it won't even be possible if the rail spur as part of the Plum Creek proposal is passed, because parts of it will simply disappear and become owned by the railroad. Can you talk to us a little about that?
Wish I could. You're getting into something legally and technically now that I'm not too up on what the railroad can or can't do. Why would the railroad through Hawthorne disappear? This is pretty
No, not the railroad, the area to make, if the proposal is passed, hypothetically, which probably won't at this point, people don't like this. What about the homes and businesses right adjacent to where the proposed rail spur would go? Where exactly is that on that? If you could show us.
Oh, you're talking about the new railroad spurs they're proposing
Yes.
eventually on their land?
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, they're proposing this area over here. Again, this is all very hypothetical. Here's 301 coming up, okay? In one or two places here, they're proposing to run a little rail spur over to the areas where they want to concentrate manufacturing centers, unspecified manufacturing centers. So they're proposing that if the market warrants it, they want to build some little short rail spurs into their property. Because they think, and they're probably right about this, rail traffic is going to increase in the next 10, 20, 30 years. The future of rail in Florida looks pretty bright.
So you're saying up north, can you put that back there? Where would this be along 301 if the president?
I couldn't give you specifics.
I know you can't, but.
And they have
Where
not,
could they? You could say that.
anywhere where it makes sense for them to do that.
But not in the
They
city,
might not do it at
but
all.
not in the city of Hawthorne. City of Hawthorne,
No,
we're seeing to think that it will be.
Again,
And that's
I don't want
advantageous.
to talk too much about this because I don't know much about it.
Okay.
I don't know what they're proposing to do in Hawthorne, so I can't say whether or not they're going to expand or contract. The main line through Hawthorne if anything, it's going to increase in use,
Yes, of course.
regardless of what Plum Creek does. That's just the
Absolutely.
future of the state. And that may or may not catalyze some new development or growth in Hawthorne. If they think that they can build some manufacturing, distribution type facilities near Hawthorne to take advantage of the rail spur, then the place it's going to happen is right there beside Plum Creek's land. Now, there's no shortage of land that's already available for these purposes. I should mention that too. There's enough already approved residential capacity in the western urban part of Alachua County to accommodate 50 years worth of growth. Residential and commercial. And there's already a lot of industrially zoned land around the county that's not being utilized. We just are not seeing interest from the big national or state manufacturers. Alachua County is not the most logical place to do things like that. It's not a lot of reasons. So nothing is stopping these kind of jobs they're talking about from happening already. If there was someone interested in building a plant in Hawthorne, they could do it. You don't have to do it on Plum Creek's land.
Preaching to the choir.
What
I think, well, I'll ask you later, I think, because I'm not being
I
clear.
think what she's trying to, I think, I understand what she's trying to ask.
Yeah, thanks.
Is, if they build development, they build industrial zoning in their townships. The thing is, you know, everybody's saying it's gonna bring jobs to Ponce. All I can say to you is look at what's done to west side of Annisville, where you've got Delta Plantation, you know, and you got the industrial zoning out across the road. It really hasn't done much for Archer. And also, you look at the main corridor for Archer Road, and that's one of the busiest places in the county. It's not the business. And you have two major restaurants that can't stay open, you know, right on the corridor. So, for it to think, everybody thinks that it's gonna help Hawthorne, I think
It's really important to bear in mind that what Plum Creek is doing, they're simply trying to get land use changes that will allow them to compete with everyone else who's trying to do the same thing. It's important to remember that. Plum Creek's not the only player in Alachua County or in this part of the state. So the guys who can get their zoning in place, get things done in the right place, buy the land that's in the right area, they're all going to be competing with each other. So it's not limited. Potential for economic development, it's hard to limit to Plum Creek. They're just saying, me too. We want in. But it's not like there's this, a dam holding back all these investors in Alachua County. And the only way to get to them is to give Plum Creek what they want. And suddenly, all the people are going to come here and want to build factories. Okay, they can do that now. Nothing stopping them. Plum Creek just wants to get in line and compete with everyone else. They want to make some money too.
The changes that they're proposing and such, is that going to affect the whole county, or is that just going to affect their little hunk of our county?
It will affect the whole county. Make no mistake about that. And the impacts, I talked about all the piggyback development and the small towns in this area. It's not just Hawthorne. More than likely, Melrose, Micanopy, La Crosse, Rochelle. These areas would see some spillover growth if they're successful 30, 40, 50 years from now. Obviously, some of that growth is going to come there. The actual digging dirt and putting things is limited to that area. Yeah, but there will be consequences for all of that area, certainly in the county.
But all of that might go unnoticed by everyone on the other side of 13th Street.
Yeah. Well, other than when they pay the taxes. Again, I think there will be fiscal impacts.
Back to the sausage making part of this process, does the state, does this have to be, the comp plan amendment or change, have to be submitted to the state for approval? It used to be, it's not part of the
Not for
community.
approval, not for approval, for review, to make sure that there are no detrimental impacts to state facilities primarily. Roads, land, and natural resources. There used to be a kind of planning review commitment at the level of the state, where local communities were required to follow their own comprehensive plans. It's state law that created the requirement for all cities and counties to have comprehensive plans. In the last 5 years or so, our current governor and legislature are in full retreat from the idea of planning. The philosophy is basically you can do whatever you want. But they did allow, and it would be hard to, I don't think it's realistic that this would ever go away. They do still allow local communities to have plans. And in Alachua County, we believe in planning. It's popular. Most people support that. So the idea, it's going to remain in place.
That neutralize the
States shallow picture. Yeah, the state's main interest is making sure if there are impacts to the road network, someone has to pay. Other than that, no, they don't do planning at the state level. Yes.
I just wanted to tell everybody that our group, Santa Fe Lake Dwellers, is having our annual meeting this coming Friday night. And we're having a meet and greet from 6 to 7. Everybody is welcome to come. It's at Trinity Episcopal Church. Probably most of you know where that is, right there on Highway 26 in Melrose. And we have 2 candidates that are both here tonight that are, there's going to be a primary next Tuesday night. And we could lose these 2 guys that night. And they're our best hope if you think Plum Creek is not right for our area. So please tell everybody you know to vote next Tuesday night, and please come to our meet and greet, and you can meet the candidates, you can meet the other candidates, everybody's invited, and 6 to 7, so please spread the word, and I have some newsletters if anybody wants one to help you remember. And
I should have specified the election I was talking about was the primary, August 26th. The general election in November, too late, decisions are made about that. The important elections in this county are the primaries, August 26th, as she said, next Tuesday. So if you don't usually vote in the primaries, and 3/4 of you don't, you need to vote this time. And because not too many people vote in the primaries, that means your vote has a big impact. You swing 500 people to one side or another, that's the election.
So you're 10 friends.
Right. 10 friends. And anyone else want to ask a question? Hasn't asked one yet? Okay.
I wonder if you can give me a little insight on the people on the task force committee, some of the people that are in the environmental conservation field. I've seen them speak out and work against other projects, like worry about the withdrawals from Medina Springs and sales of conservation land. And I've seen them really go to bat and really work hard to conserve our water resources and protected wetlands. Why would they do that? And now they're on board with the task force. I've watched the videos and it's just mind-boggling.
Well, I don't think there are. Early on, before Stanford thing got started, and the only thing we were hearing was Plum Creek's going to conserve 87% of their land. That was the story. That was the myth. And as the facts of it, now that they've actually made a formal application to the county, which they did last December, and we have details, we have a group living out an alternative reality, and what's really going to happen, you've seen a huge erosion among those people in the environmental community who were at first interested. So there aren't as many. I mean, I'm in that community very heavily, as I'm sure you know, and I'm telling you, most of them have swung to our side. Some of them have been employed by Plum Creek. I don't think you can underestimate that. Some very well-known people in this community have been hired by Plum Creek, which is fine. They're right to do that. But you need to take that into account and listen to what they say.
When we're done, they have refreshments.
That's probably the last question. One more question, and then we all get some air and breathe.
It's come up recently again. I mean, you're aware of the whole thing that's just happened with this big thing about jobs for East Gainesville and like the racism thing was brought up. And all. So, what is the best way to counter? I mean, I want to have a real succinct way to counter that argument. I mean, I've been giving the argument that downtown is just like you said tonight. Downtown is just barely recovering from all that push west. But I just don't have a real great argument sometimes to say.
East Gainesville's further away from this than they are from I-75 is really easy points to make people. Sprawl always hurts cities. Sprawl always hurts cities. That's just a given. Other than that, I don't know what else to say, other than use your common sense. I don't think some of the arguments we're hearing from people who are taking that tack are winning many converts. It's easy to see through it. So we're not too worried about that. There's always this thing that we need jobs, and that's fine, we need jobs, but not at any cost. We need to consider the consequences and have growth that's healthy the entire community, including people who already have jobs. They count too. So we think, we're not too worried about those arguments. Just point out the sprawl part of that, how that hurts cities, and how what's happening in downtown is helping East Gainesville. East Kansas is in better shape now than it was 10 years ago. And it's accelerating. I don't want to kill that momentum.
I just, it's not a question, I just wanted to add to that. Just like what you all did was to create stand by your plan, that's your best argument. The plan was set up to protect the residents who are already here in the county, to protect the natural resources that we have. And when they want to change them, that's why we get that code to stand by your plan. And why can't they use the plan? The county's already established, people have already voted, there are lots of hours and hours of talk on this. And why can't they follow along like everybody else? Why do they get to have special privileges to build where you shouldn't be building?
Yeah, here's a good way to think about it. I'm not convinced, most people I know are not convinced that Plum Creek, what they're proposing, is anyway going to have a net positive impact on the county. The development and growth they're promising will be in competition with other areas of the county. Progress Corporate Park in Alachua, the industrial zone lands that we have now, the cities that have plenty of developable land. Developers in the western part of the county are not happy about this. So it's not so much that what they're proposing is going to be new and different, so much as it's going to be in competition with what's happening elsewhere in the county. They talk about a few unique things, but they haven't been able to demonstrate that there's a market for any of it.
But what I'm really so sensitive to is it just gets to me so emotionally that I feel like they've taken a vulnerable population and they're manipulating a vulnerable population, and it's just the need for to me. I just can't.
They are, but without going into detail, I think we have a good reason to believe that the majority, even in the African American community, are not buying it and don't support it. Yes.
It's got a request. I mean, it's kind of off the subject, it has to do with railroad. And I don't know if you can help us.
Okay, probably not.
Got a little bit more clout than we do. You know, we had a derailment at the railroad tracks here. When you go home, if you go across the
I
road.
never, I've seen.
Yeah. And I think it'll sit there until somebody says something. And I was surprised that the state had to do something. They had to.
It's kind
Kind of tore the road up, and, they got the trains going, and that's all they care about.
My assumption is that all that stuff that's there now is within CSX's property.
It's same deal, I think it's on both, CSX and the state. I mean, there's some cardboard and stuff that's like stuck in the woods there, started growing over.
I'm definitely not promising anything, but I will
Just kind of
look into it.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Any other questions? Y'all are tough, it's hot.
On the task force, how do you know what that is you were not there? How
They're
do you
all-
know?
They're all recorded. You all can go to Plum Creek's website, the Division Local Task Force, and watch these meetings. I have not watched them all, I've watched some. I know, I've talked to quite a few people who are on the task force. One former task force member is here tonight and can tell you about the process. So it's all public. They haven't hidden anything. We can see what they're doing, just like Stand By Our Plan. Everything we do, we try to get out there.
Well, something I alluded to earlier on Stand By Your Plan, and I'm not saying I'm for or against anything, but what I don't understand, and I'm not a very political person, so you'll have to bear with me, okay, is it appears, and I don't know how other people here feel about it, but everything's done for downtown, west, but under your plan, you don't have no plans for the eastern part of the county and using the wetlands and all this. To me, sounds like a total cop-out. I mean, if you can make exceptions for developers and all that on tiny little pieces of land that have all these subdivisions and all, what happens on our side of town?
Okay, a couple of points raised, and good. I'm glad that you're here asking these questions, because we always invite Plum Creek, invite them to come to all of our meetings. We want to have debates with them. They refuse. They will not do debates with us. The best thing
So
would
in
be
other words, you
Plum-
invited them tonight and they would not come?
every night, and we've repeatedly asked them, we want to do joint forums with you, so people can listen to both of us speaking at the same time. I would prefer that.
Thank you.
I like
That was
preaching.
another
I
question
don't like-
I had.
I don't mind preaching to the choir, but I really want to engage the people who think
Right.
differently, because we think we're right. We think the facts are on our side. And Plum Creek has been quite explicit, we are not going to debate it. So, any of you, how many of you saw that thing in Hall? Shell Elementary?
We went there, they were there.
That wasn't supposed to happen, that was not their plan. We had to kind of elbow our way onto that stage. Okay, that was a town hall meeting put together by the mayor of the town. And it was basically an opportunity for Plum Creek to come do their presentation, which they've done. But they called it a town hall meeting.
Yes,
They use
that
a public
is.
school. So we and our supporters, some of you, got very active on Facebook, emails, put a lot of pressure on them during the last week after Plum Creek had already committed to do it, to let us come say something too. So we basically strong-armed them into actually making it a real town hall. Now, it wasn't. They got to speak as long as they wanted to, and there was a time constraint on me, and there were some other problems. But at least that's the only time, well, there have been 2 instances where I or someone from our group has been on the same stage as someone from Plum Creek, and that was enough. That's the model. You ought to be able to just sit down and go at it. They don't want to do that. I think that's very revealing, because they've got all the professionals. They hired a lot of professionals to make their arguments. We don't have that. But just to quickly get to your point about, it's our plan, stand by our plan, it's the county's comprehensive plan, and I don't think it's doing anything to restrict growth and development opportunities on the east side. Each of the cities has their own comp plan. They all have annexation reserve boundaries all around them. If there is economic opportunity in the eastern third of the county, there's nothing stopping it now. So there are market forces at work, and there are natural resource constraints. There are reasons why all the growth and development is happening in Gainesville and west of Gainesville. But there's a lot of economic reasons why that makes sense. So the idea that Alachua County is stopping that from happening, I don't agree with that.
No, I don't mean they're stopping it, I don't think they're helping. I don't think they're stopping.
I don't think it's
I just
government.
don't think they're helping. I mean, just the way
Okay.
things appear.
We feel like we're going
You
to
can
step
always
on
tell
the
by
line.
how things appear.
Right.
But
I promise all things to all people and say the comp plan is going to cause economic revival in Eastern Alachua County, but it's not set up to do that. There are limits on what government is supposed to do. We're supposed to provide a level playing field, and then market forces kind of drive what happens, and that's what we're doing. That's why the comp plan creates rules that everyone has to abide by. Plum Creek wants their own set of rules. Coming back to that, they want their own set of rules, independently negotiated with the county. We would never do that with other developers. They're not seeking the minor exception kind of thing you alluded to. They want something entirely different. They're turning the comp plan on its head, and they want their own set of rules. And we just don't think that's right. You come up, if something makes sense, it makes sense for everyone. You put it in the law, everyone abides by it.
did you know their original plan was just to develop north of 1474 and south of 26?
They never had an original plan. They had
Well-
submitted a proposal in December, the first time they've ever committed anything to writing.
That was the first area they were interested in. I'll rephrase that.
They keep shifting about
Well,
what's the
they-
most important.
Yes, since it
And
has.
the reality is, they have no idea what's going to happen first or how long it's going to take.
No.
They're just getting the zoning in place, and they're going to sit. They'll go back to growing trees. This idea that all this stuff's going to, if they get these zonings, no. They really are taking a long-term view. It makes the property inherently more valuable for resale if it has rights attached to it. Even if they sell it to somebody else who wants to grow trees, it's more valuable if 50 years from now, 75 years from now, it has the potential to be something different. You know, if the oceans keep rising, everyone moves up here to the northern part of the state, you know, maybe we'll have a little more growth here one day. Anyway, yes, ma'am.
I know you didn't
No.
cover it much, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're okay.
I just moved up from South Florida, so it's kind of strange that you talked about that. I lived in South Dade County,
You've been through it.
and yes.
Miramar.
I watched the sprawl, I watched everything that happened after Hurricane Andrew. I watched the building, I watched swamplands be built up around the Everglades, and I know you didn't discuss it much here, but where is that water sitting there gonna go when it rains? When those things flood, all of our properties are gonna change their flood zones. That water has to go somewhere. And up north is not where it's gonna go. Water doesn't run uphill in Florida. And so I know you didn't talk much about the water, but if you have another meeting, I would like to hear more about that. Because if they don't have a plan for where that water goes, it will affect everyone in the county.
They will tell you that they do, and I'm not a hydrogeologist, so I'm not really in a position to say yea or nay. But the specifics have not been proposed yet because we're not at that stage of the development process. A lot of people are wondering, how are they going to deal with their wastewater, with their sewage? Are they going to pipe it into Hawthorne? Are they going to pipe it to GRU? Are they going to have on-site? Where is the water coming from? Where are they going to go in the aquifer? Those kind of issues which are over my head are not being discussed now because that doesn't come until after we've given away all the rights. That's the way the process moves.
And that's the same thing with the roads as well, right?
Very much so. Very much so. So I just don't get into that. It's so
Or
big
even
now.
when the alligators start swimming in the pool.
Thank you.
Because they will. And the water moccasins, like you
It
don't have
says
enough
10 for a
of
couple, so it's 5 each.
This subject, I don't have any answers, so I need to know something.
I'll take it to them.
It's a good point that the flood change.
In other words, once they get those, they're going to settle, they're not going to be building them.
Right. Correct. Right. The only thing they are doing is, remember the CEO, they're increasing their entitlement value and then one is. Okay, I see general discontent, so I'm going to close this. Go get some,